Sunnyvale Democratic Club. Welcome to the Sunnyvale Democratic Club. My name is Mike Cerrone. I'm the current president. We should have an exciting meeting today. We're going to discuss the upcoming primary and the many candidates on the ballot. And when we leave here, we're going to be able to all fill our ballots out. All the things will be answered. It should be a really rich and rewarding experience. So as we get started here, I can acknowledge some of the many elected officials and even commissioners we have here. We have Mayor Klein. We also have Councilmember Sell. I'm just my first chance to even look around the room here, but we have Alexander Gvatua, on the Fremont Union De Anza Foothill board, and of course we have, yes, on Fremont Union, as I was just going to say, Fremont Union, we have Pat Carpio, and on the Sunnyvale School District, we have Bridget Watson. I see Tim Wee here from the county, something to do with Roads Commission, yes. And Crystal Wickham on the County Sustainability Commission. Who am I missing here? No, I mentioned the mayor, didn't I? And online. All right. All right. Well, we'll get to that later. Somehow I can't seem to scroll for those names. All right. Oh, Doug Kuntz on this Sunnyvale Sustainability Commission. And Scott Duncan on HHS. And Carter Hu on the Library Board of Trustees and the AD 26, Patrick Aaron's district director. He was just, I just found out about that today. Congratulations, Carter. So, as we get started, I'll just mention that so later in the meeting, we're going to have board elections. So we'll have that towards the end of the meeting. And if you're on the meeting, you probably know the agenda is to talk about the upcoming election. I also want to mention that at our next meeting in June, we will have our endorsement meeting for the Sunnyvale City Council. So that should be exciting. And in July sometime, we haven't decided, we will have our club picnic. So before we get started on those topics, I want to just, we want to give a brief update on the couple things we talked about at our last meeting. We spent some time talking about the flock cameras and about safe parking, although we were talking more generally about homelessness in Sunnyvale. So we wanted to give a brief update on those two items, which were both addressed to some extent at the last, I think it was the last council meeting. And so we have Mayor Klein to summarize with the actions taken for the flock cameras. We want to, and here's a microphone, turn it on. And this is just a brief update in case you missed the meeting. Curious after listening to our last meeting. We're not going to spend what could usually be 3 hours litigating. Summary of what the council decided.
Sure, absolutely. So thank you, Mike. Thank you all. So for those of you that missed our council meeting that went to about 2:15 a.m., I think that was one of my longest council meetings, especially as mayor. We had lots of residents and advocates come speak. I think it was, so for those of you that attended, or if you get a chance, definitely I was very impressed with what the chief and the director of IT, their presentation, and this is, you saw a lot of cities turning off their flock cameras, turning off their ALPRs, the automated license plate readers, somewhat as a knee-jerk reaction, as opposed to Sunnyvale did its due diligence. And to me, I think that was an important part of this process. We looked at the number of crimes that had been directly tied to what the ALPRs have helped solve. So, at least 61 arrests directly related to the ALPRs. The silver alerts of some, let's say, seniors that were a little befuddled behind the wheel of a car that didn't know where they were. Things like that. There's certain things that couldn't have been solved or couldn't have been immediately dealt with without the ALPRs or just chance from public safety standpoint. So ultimately, from a council, we heard that input. We heard from lots of residents on and business owners on both sides of the issue. But I was very impressed with our chief. And if you get a chance, just watching and our director of IT, just watching their presentation, I think it was really informative, and they were very well prepared from that standpoint. Council ultimately decided to retain Flock, and we raised issues about trust with them. And what council is doing is basically doing that balance of privacy, personal privacy with public safety. And at least for now, they are the best solution that we have. But seeing IT's deep audit that they did was very useful from that standpoint. And so from a direction standpoint, what we did from council is we now need a yearly update from DPS as far as what that flock system and the ALPRs. So getting a detailed update on a yearly basis on what the ALPR system has done from a DPS standpoint, having a yearly audit from our IT department. A lot of cities have their public safety departments do let's say the non-technical people doing a review of what the ALPRs, the flock system's doing. No, we had our IT department look at logs and data retention and all of that. And they came back and said we had not had a breach, unlike some cities that the federal government had come in and Mountain View, and I didn't bring it up at the last meeting, but Mountain View had it misconfigured from day one. And that was part of the issues of Flock and Mountain View public safety were pointing fingers at each other that it had been misconfigured. Whose fault that didn't catch that? It's on both sides, but they turned it off. And I think, for us, we had what was eye-opening also is we have 20 in our city. Mountain View had 30. San Jose has 474 cameras. There are cities that have turned it off and turned it back on a few months later after they've seen a dramatic, increase in crime. But from a city standpoint, we asked for, a yearly report to council, a yearly IT audit, and they're doing very deep dive as far as that's concerned. Ultimately, DPS is doing a long-term or a continual evaluation of what's changing in a state law. And then council basically added an additional thing. If there's a breach, it's taking action to, inform council, turning off the ALPRs if a breach actually happened, and trying to figure out, what the next steps are. But trying to balance that public safety of residents versus the privacy issues. I think that was the big thing. And, council unanimously approved continuing forward. But to hear, from, business owners or residents that feel safer because of that is important. And we don't, unlike some cities, don't have them in any sensitive areas. We have them
basically at certain intersections coming into our city, as opposed to, in San Jose, they're near churches, they're near, Planned Parenthood. There are bigger questions as far as, doing that swath of having so many cameras in your community. So that was a relatively quick, update on what council decided. But, ultimately, the meeting went late, but I do think that, at least from our standpoint, it was very clear that they do provide value in our community. When you talked about the jewelry store thefts a year ago, nothing has fixed them more than the ALPRs, that you had a jewelry store owner come and talk and basically say, it's like when there are 3 or 4 stolen vehicles coming into our community simultaneously, our public safety immediately informs the jewelry stores because they have been a target, and that has stopped the jewelry store thefts, the mass break-ins and mass smash and grabs that we saw a year ago. And to see, blood on the walls and broken, to visit those sites and see, just how bad it can be. I do think that it provides an important resource and an important tool to public safety to make our community safer. So I'll get off my soapbox and pass it back to you, Mike.
There was some discussion of eventually trying to go to hosting the data in-house.
Yes, and so right now, and so definitely, we are taking lots of additional items to Flock, and their data retention. So we're very clear they were only collecting photos of license plates in the rear of cars. So this was, lots of residents were concerned about, they have facial recognition and all this. No, it's very, very limited on what the cameras are collecting. So going through that database, where that database is kept, this is always an issue of how much money we would have to spend to keep it in-house. San Jose was actually keeping their data for a year. We had it from 30 days from day one. For all the cities that still have ALPRs in the county, they're all at 30 days. So we looked at data retention and decided to keep the data retention the same. Whether or not we bring that in-house, IT is looking at that. It's just servers and issues from that standpoint. Having that data localized at Flock right now is the easier solution, and they keep updating their system, providing multiple factors authentication and all that. And that's having that expertise. That being said, if there's another solution in the county that becomes available, that was one of the directions that I've been talking to the city manager and the chief about. If there's an alternative solution, evaluating that solution going forward. But there is value with the number of cities that are using the same system. When there was a crime in South Sunnyvale, and we basically put out the report. That person was caught an hour later going into Los Gatos. And so there is value with multiple systems having that, multiple cities having that same system.
Okay. I have a question, which I'm sure we're having trouble with our cameras blinking off and on for reasons unknown to us. Probably has to do with the Flock cameras all over the place. So it's my theory, but related, this is probably really out there, but given that we are now going to have an ICE detention facility in county down by Gilroy, would it be possible for the Flock cameras to tell us when ICE agents are entering our city?
If they were being used for public, for, let's say, putting out the reports for those government vehicles, potentially, I haven't seen it used from that standpoint. Normally it's only, crimes, and just driving a government vehicle isn't necessarily a crime, or whether or not they're using private cars is a whole other thing.
Well,
but
wouldn't
definitely
necessarily arrest them, just know that they're here.
Understood. And, I've been talking to the mayors of Morgan Hill and Gilroy and council members there on that concern right now. And, it is, it's very difficult to hear especially their community so localized, where they're adjacent to conceivably that detention center, and hearing from fears from people in our community of that, it's unacceptable. And happy that the CEO from the county is ready to fight that, and our public safety or our county attorney is working on that also.
Okay, thank you. That gives us an update. And I'll just quickly summarize unless you want to do
No,
it,
go
the
ahead.
safe parking. Last week we covered Unhoused 101. It was a last meeting. It was a broad discussion of the homeless strategy for the city, and the staff is working on an overall homeless strategy plan to be before council in July, I believe. So safe parking is a part of that. What we heard at the council meeting was that safe parking was not viable in Sunnyvale, and a better solution would be tiny homes or transitional housing, but tiny homes. So that's where that stands right now.
And council, when that came in front of us, we basically said, come back to us in September with several things. One of which is, not just tiny homes, but interim housing. I was not happy to see the, immediately going towards the quote unquote tiny home solution. It's whatever interim housing and whatever partners we could get, looking at 2 locations, one of which is right here at Fair Oaks and 237, a city lot. There's also a city lot underneath Matilda that we wanted them to look at, and not just for tiny homes, but conceivably safe parking. Tiny homes, interim housing, they said wouldn't be 2 to 5, would not be viable until 2 to 5 years. Conceivably using that same location for safe parking in the interim would make sense. So we gave that direction to staff. We also said, one of the things that we wanted to do was double down on what the barriers for, safe parking at some of our churches are. We put a grant out available last year and haven't really had a good response. Conceivably, some of the questions was that because of insurance? So figuring out what those barriers are, bringing that back in September. And then lastly, a oversized vehicle permit parking to kind of lead people to safe parking, find, potential streets where oversized vehicles could be, and then conceivably looking at a oversized vehicle permit citywide for residents who want to park their RVs in front of their home, having that capability, but then also making sure that we're focusing oversized vehicles to certain areas where we have appropriate outreach or services or monitoring, to making sure that they're not doing illegal dumping, to making sure that they're not causing an overall nuisance into our residential neighborhoods.
All right. Thank you, Mayor.
You're very welcome. Thank you all. So that was a bigger question. Staff basically made the case that safe parking, so money was better spent for interim housing as opposed to only those people with oversized vehicles or living in their cars. The interim housing solution also would directly address the people, the unhoused in our streets, in our community, beyond just those living in their cars and oversized vehicles. And so as opposed to do, safe parking, and what we've been doing for like warming centers and things of that nature is renting hotel rooms, and deciding, staff was basically making the case the money is best spent to create that interim housing, which would deal with those unhoused without cars or RVs, as well as those that are living not well, but living, inside of a car or inside of an oversized vehicle.
Yeah, the question was, what was the reason for saying it wasn't viable?
Sorry.
And so, okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I predict we'll revisit this subject at some point in the future. All right, so now we're going to move to the main part of the meeting, and we're going to go through different board members have volunteered to research the different races, not all the races, but the most contentious races, meaning superintendent of education, insurance commissioner, treasurer, lieutenant governor, and finally governor. And so we're not going to do endorsements here because basically whatever, overall the state doesn't care what we have to say here in Sunnyvale. So let's not pretend they do. So, but it's for the purpose of educating our members. So we will have people present each of these races, what they found out about it. And then we'll ask members if they have some other added information that they can add to this. So we're just trying to combine our collective, very extensive knowledge and educate ourselves on this. We have so many basically open races. It's really mind-boggling. So first up is Superintendent of Education. So Tara, come on down. Do you want the slides up or?
No.
Okay.
I don't think so.
Okay. No.
Okay, so first of all, you need to understand.
There's a switch. Here. There we go.
Okay. So the methodology matters as to how the research is done. And so you need to know that I usually read stuff and then I go ask somebody who is in the area that I'm exploring. So for this, there were quite a number of people that I talked to about this activity. So I'm going to read you some things that Alexander Fatwa said. He was one of the people that I got to, and this is a context for what this does. He says, short answer, there are three candidates that rise to the top. Richard Barrera, San Diego school board member who has gained statewide reputation for leading some impressive changes in San Diego. Nichelle Henderson, a former teacher herself, a progressive community college trustee, and someone who has thoughtful, ambitious vision for the office. And Al Muratsuchi, a former board member and college educator who previously chaired the Assembly's Education Committee. So that, and then he said, you probably should know what that actual job is. And he says, in truth, the superintendent really doesn't have the kinds of policy making that most people think they do. Statewide education policy making is largely in the hands of the State Board of Education, whose members are appointed by the governor and largely reflect the governor's policy and preferences. The superintendent's principal roles are one, to execute the policies set by this board, and two, act as an administrator and manager for the state education department. So that was a little different from what I was thinking that it was. And Alexander goes on to say, even these roles are likely to change in light of a recent proposal from Governor Newsom to transfer policy implementation and management of the department to the governor's office and the board. Under this proposal, the superintendent would at best be a sort of ombudsman for the department, advocate for issues, evaluate the programs adopted by the governor and board, maybe coordinate in some of those initiatives, but devoid of any real management authority or policy power, either on the development or the implementation fronts. So I thought that was interesting information to have as context for this. And he has three, he's given three valid people who might be appropriate for the job. He says he's leaning towards Barrera. And then I want to bring up our own trustees here for Sunnyvale SESD and for the Fremont Union High School District. And I called people that I know that work also in the League of Women Voters. So they cannot make recommendations publicly at all. So they will remain absolutely anonymous. But that is a resource that we all have for getting information and good information. So I do want to mention that Naomi Nakano Manamotsu has endorsed Al for the education superintendent. And she says, I'm supporting Al Muratsuchi. In my opinion, he's the most qualified candidate running for the role. A former school board member, former chair of the Assembly Education Committee, and has offered some of the legislation that has helped school districts most in the last decade, from Safe Haven Schools Act to the statewide school bond, to education workforce housing, to charter school accountability, to expanding programs for English learners, and a ton more. He often authors CSBA-sponsored legislation, helping with the local control and funding. So of the people that I spoke with, we had votes, I got votes for both Bracera and Maratsuchi. So those are ones that you might want to further explore. And I'm hoping here that some of the people who are on the endorsement group might have some things to say about it. Is anybody interested in saying anything more about?
Yeah, we have a, yeah. So get some comments from
Bridget Watson, who is also a trustee for the Sunnyvale Elementary School District.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm speaking on my own behalf, obviously. Al Muratsuchi, we've worked with him at the county level a number of times, talking to him, giving feedback and writing letters in support of his legislation to protect immigrants in the last year of the Trump administration. So he's been very progressive, and actually they moved him off of the education committee because they felt like they put someone else in charge of Dr. Anisha Patel in charge of the education committee because they felt like it was giving him too much power right now because people really want their bills to pass through the education committee. So they removed him from that so that he could campaign separately. But he is extremely qualified, and the gentleman from San Diego is also very, very passionate speaker and, very knowledgeable. But Al Muratsuchi has done the policy work. And as far as Governor Newsom's proposal to make the governor's office all powerful for education, if we end up with 2 Republican candidates, that's going to be scary as heck. So I don't know what's going to happen. I just do not recommend that at all, having them slightly separate. So that's a different issue. But it is something to be nervous about if that goes through, because who knows, rolling the dice. It was an overly confident measure. But yes, so Al Muratsuchi, he's just worked very closely with the California Latino School Boards Association, and also the APISMA, which is the Asian Pacific Islander School Boards Members Association. He's worked with them because in this area, in Santa Clara County, we have school districts that have like 70 or 80, even 80% Asian families, right? It's students and families. But in all across California, the student population, Asian population is actually pretty low. And I think there's only like 5% of school board trustees who are Asian American. So having an Asian American in that role would really offer some new representation for the diversity that we see here in Northern California. He has a good relationship with Northern California in general and has outreached across multiple communities. So I will be voting for Almer Atsushi.
So Alexander is here. Would you like to speak a little bit for this?
The designated chair. I mean, if there are any particular questions about, some of the candidates I'm familiar with, or about the change that the governor is proposing, I mean, I'm happy to speak to some of those. I certainly have my thoughts to the changes that are being proposed by the governor's office.
Well, why don't we go for a summary of your candidate, preferred candidate?
Yeah. So, like I said, I think there are three candidates who rise to the top for me. Richard Barrera is one that has kind of caught my eye and that I'm leaning towards currently. He's a school board member down in San Diego, and I think has done some very impressive things there, both on the kind of scholastic achievement side. That's a district that has seen sort of leaps and bounds in kind of metrics on scholastic achievement, student outcomes, but also for teachers as well. They are now the district that best pays teachers in the state, and has been able to do that without running into some of the budgetary issues that other districts have run into when they've tried to keep parity on that. And I think has also really kind of taken an interesting co-governance approach to his role on the board and as a president of the board down in San Diego. And so governing in partnership with teachers, with unions, with parent associations, even with student organizations, taking a kind of a shared governance model that really brings in a lot of the different stakeholders. That is something that I found very impressive about his tenure. But like I said, I think Almer Atsushi is also one of the better candidates for the role, and Nichelle Henderson, although I may be biased, Nichelle Henderson is also a community college trustee, so there may be some bias there, but I think she's also someone who has a bold vision for the office, and I think that's something that's going to be important, especially if the office essentially gets neutered. The way the governor is proposing to do so is to have somebody who will get in there and take a bolder vision of what can be done with that office, and I'll just kind of accept this. Well, I'm just going to kind of sit here and look at the programs and make some suggestions, and they'll get ignored by the governor, and they'll do whatever they want to do anyway.
Thank you very much. I think it's much better to hear from the people who are championing these folks than just from me. So thank you all very much.
Before we move on to the next race, any comments online? I guess not. So next up, Insurance Commissioner, Crystal. Okay, sure.
Host the meeting and find the slides. And can you put the slides up? Actually?
Yeah.
I'm your host. Can you spotlight me? I'll spotlight myself. All right. I'm following Tara. I did not do such detailed interviews as Tara did for the insurance commissioner. I didn't really know who to ask. This is a role that is pretty administrative, and it is nonpartisan, although we do know the party of each person who's running. There are 11 candidates on the ballot, and of those, there's about 5 major candidates. And of those 5, 4 are Democrats. The incumbent, Ricardo Laura, is term limited and is also retiring. So this is a pretty consequential race, considering that many insurance companies across the state are either leaving the state altogether or refusing to write insurance policies in high risk or fire prone areas. So when we get the slides up, we can see kind of the role that the insurance commissioner does, because it's,
Okay.
yeah, you got that up there. Okay. Yeah, so the key duties of the role are regulating insurance rates, validating insurance companies' financial reserves, protecting consumers, licensing all the brokers and agents in the state, and prosecuting fraud. So the primary insurance types are home insurance, business, workers' comp, and auto. But notably, it does not include health insurance. So that is regulated by a different department altogether. All right, so the California Department of Insurance is who this insurance commissioner is in charge of, and they have about 1,400 employees and a budget of about $350 million, and 9 regional offices around the state. Also notable is that the department is self-funded, so there's no taxpayer expense associated with it. They get all of their money through fees and assessments, and so that's one nice thing about this particular office. All right, can we go to the next slide? All right, so we've got the 5 candidates. Yeah, so Ben Allen is the first one that I'll go over. He's actually who I would choose to vote for. And it's because of his experience in the state Senate, and also he was chair of the Senate Environmental Quality Committee. And I am very passionate about the environment, so I have some bias here. Anyway, he does have endorsements from many key players, but also some key environmental organizations. The role also does have an outside impact on policy that supports how California adapts to climate change. All right, and I'm going to read from a KQED interview with him. Allen says he will seek to reduce rates by reducing risk, working with local and state officials to design neighborhood-scale programs that make communities safer. He also plans to expand grants and financing to help home and business owners safeguard their properties from fire. He wants to modernize and speed up rate setting and reviews. Allen supports efforts pushing fossil fuel companies to bear some cost for climate damages that drive up insurance prices. All right, let's go to the next slide. So I'm going to just very briefly talk about the other 3 Democrats and the Republican in the race. Okay, so Stephen Bradford. All right, so Bradford does have pretty good endorsements from organized labor. He did switch kind of mid-cycle from running for lieutenant governor to now running for insurance commissioner. He does have prior ties to and friendly votes for the utility industry. and like he was an executive at in one of the Southern California Edison long before. All right, and let's see. This is also a statement from the KQED interview, same one. Bradford says artificially suppressing rates will drive insurers away from the state. He wants rate changes to be reviewed faster and says the state must also, quote, must also invest in wildfire mitigation and resilience. He wants the FAIR plan reformed as a true safety net for those who need it, not a long-term solution. All right, so also a former state senator. Let's go to the next slide. All right, so Jane Kim, she was also intriguing to me as I was researching her. She has key progressive endorsements. She does not take money from insurance, fossil fuels, or corporate PACs. She's also not self-funding. She was an effective San Francisco supervisor. And from the KQED interview, Kim says she would seek to negotiate with insurers to provide broad availability. To promote affordability, she'd push for transparency from companies about how premiums are being spent. Kim proposes a statewide affordable disaster insurance program similar to systems in France and New Zealand to stabilize coverage, prevent mass cancellations, and invest in climate resiliency. Okay, next one. Okay, this is Patrick Wolf. He is self-funding from his own money, but he does not accept money from insurance or fossil fuel companies. And from KQED interview, Wolf plans to increase competition by publishing a report card on each insurance company and wants to reduce the time for review of rate filings. That's a very common thing that most of them are talking about. It must take a long time for the office to review those rate change filings. He wants to require insurance companies to detail steps homeowners can take to reduce risk and receive discounts for making those changes. It does have an interesting and supportive history, but with limited endorsements and being largely self-funded, there's concern that he may not be the most viable, especially in the general election. Okay, and the next one is the last one. So again, the insurance commissioner is not a partisan role, but we are a partisan club. So I'm not going to take a lot of time on this candidate, who has been endorsed by the California Republican Party. All right, so summarizing again, my favorite pick is, what was his name? Ben Allen, yes. Okay. All right, and I welcome any other members that have inputs. Tara, please.
This was an interesting one because I was also talking to some insurance agents that, and I was saying, what is their preference for this? And Wolf, he said, the guy's a nerd. He's not political at all. He's a dork. You know? And I said, okay. And he wouldn't be working on any partisan kinds of things. That was the issue that he was talking about. So
thank you. Barbara Fukumoto.
Just quickly, I remember Bradford as opposing community choice energy. He was an obstacle during those days when we were trying to set them up. So I don't like him.
I went to the California Democratic Party convention, I think it was in February, a couple of months ago. And I can tell you, and we voted on all these people. If you got 50%, then you got the endorsement. If you didn't get 50%, you didn't get the endorsement. Just for your information, Ben Allen came out first with 41%. Jane Kim was second with 40%. Stephen Bradford was third with 8%. Patrick Wolf was fourth with 6%. And I can also tell you the public instruction if you're interested. Now, this is 2 months ago, mind you, so lots happened since then. Which one, public instruction? Oops, wait a minute. I have it. Oh, public instruction. Public instruction was Nichelle Henderson was first with 24%. Murasucci was second with 22%. Josh Newman was third with 16%. Richard Barrera was fourth with 12%. And then there were a couple of more, one other candidate. These are all Democrats, obviously. And insurance, did I tell you insurance? Oh, insurance was Ben Allen was 1 with 41%. Jane Kim 2 with 40%. Steve Bradford 3 with 8%. Patrick Wolf with 4 with 6. Fourth with 6%. I have all these things here if you're interested.
All right. Any comments online? All right. I guess we can move to the next. Scott is asking if we can provide a copy of the slides, which we can. Okay, next is Treasurer, Charlene. Okay, I'll warn people, these slides were originally created by an AI query. And and then edited by, various people. So if there's anything insane in there, whatever, that's right. It's AI's fault. Let me see. Okay, let's change the camera. Spotlight, turn it off.
Hello.
Okay. And okay, so you want me to share the slides?
Yeah.
All right, let me do that again.
So I just volunteered to research the treasurer candidates, and luckily there aren't that many top candidates. So my homework was relatively easy. There's only 2 major candidates. So first I'll describe what the job responsibilities are, because, that's not always obvious. There's so many different financial roles in government. What the treasurer does is it's merely clerical work. These are quotes from Cal Matters and people who have done this job. And it lacks creativity, was what a former treasurer says. The work is carried out by the professional staff, and they are pretty much immune to changes in who the treasurer is. The treasurer doesn't really do policy. They get to make a few decisions, and these are their responsibilities. They sell bonds, they award tax credits, oversee pension funds, and they invest the billions in idle cash for a maximum return. So that means they get to decide where to invest the money. If they value clean energy, for example, they could decide to invest in clean energy. Why? How do I go to the next page? Oh, maybe we can. Oh, there it is. So one of the two top candidates is Eleni Kounalakis. She is, many of you may know her, she is the current Lieutenant Governor of California, whose job it is to wake up every day and ask, is the governor dead? No? Okay, I'll just go on my day. That's what a lieutenant governor is, I've heard, does. She also was a former U.S. ambassador to Hungary under Obama's presidency. Because of her, she's got a lot of money because her father is a developer, construction. He has a company based in Sacramento, and they made a lot of money. So she has a lot of money and has been in the political field, donating to various candidates. As a result, she has top endorsements from Hillary Clinton, Nancy Pelosi, and Gavin Newsom. She's also endorsed by the California Labor Federation, Teamsters California, and the National Union of Healthcare Workers. And this is kind of significant that these are mostly labor-related groups, because as you'll see, the next candidate, why this is important. The top contributors, so she contributes to her campaign, and then individuals, Tsakopoulos family, that's her family, that's her maiden name. Barrier developers, Greek American business community. She is a very strongly identifies with the Greek American community. She's Greek American. Her father immigrated from Greece. And her husband is Greek. And then industries that support her: real estate, finance, hospitality, Democratic Women's Issue PACs. Okay, so, and then that's a recent photo of her, just to put a face to this name so that it's easier to remember who I'm talking about. Okay, do I press this? Oh, okay, good. Oops. Okay, so the second candidate is Ana Caballero, and she is the current state senator for District, I think, 14 from, I think it's Fresno. And she's a former state assembly member, former Salinas mayor, and a cabinet member under Jerry Brown, appointed by Jerry Brown. Her top endorsements individuals are Robert Rivas, Monique Limon. And if you don't know who they are, then that says something. I mean, not about you, but about. Right. But what I wanted to say is they're not as well known as the previous candidates' endorsements. And then she's endorsed by the California Latino Legislative Caucus. She's Latino herself. The California Conference of Carpenters, which is a labor group, California State Association of Electrical Workers, Democratic Legislative Women's Caucus, and Young Democrats. And so what I wanted to say, comparing to Kounalakis, is they both have labor endorsements, even though Eleni Kounalakis is not just a labor person. The top contributors, so she has outraised Kounalakis since the start of 2026. Although she has less money just because she's not as rich, but so that says something. She's popular. Central Valley Agribusiness, Latino Business Networks, Building Trades Unions, and she's endorsed or contributed by agriculture groups, construction, and labor. So, and that's a picture of her. And then I just did a slide where I compared them on a couple of other fronts, just to show that they are actually very similar candidates. One identifies as Greek American, she's a woman, and the other identifies as Hispanic woman. And they like to advertise that they were the first in many public offices. So Kounalakis was the first woman California lieutenant governor, the first Greek American California lieutenant governor, and Caballero was the first woman Salinas mayor, first Latina District 28 state assembly member, and first Latina District 12 state senator. And then their policy interests. So Kounalakis has interest in higher education. She serves on the boards of the UC Regents and the California State Universities. And she, while there, she was against tuition hikes. And then she is a proponent of the environment, which is something that I value as well. And she also has been a proponent of affordable housing. Caballero is also a proponent of housing. So in that sense, she doesn't vary from the other candidate. She is interested in agriculture and rural economies. That's her district, and that's what she cares about. Just a few minor criticisms. I wouldn't say these criticisms are serious, but the criticism on Kounalakis is that she appears to be using the treasurer role as a stepping stone to something else, because she was in the race for governor, but then pulled out early this year, having decided that there were too many candidates and she has no chance to win despite her big treasure chest. And then Caballero, her criticism is she's not environmental enough. That's not her focus, and she has voted against the, like, for certain things like agriculture that may have harmed the environment. I forget the details, but something else was more prioritized more highly than environment. So there, I simplified it to these two candidates for you. There are, I think, about 4 or 5 other candidates, but they have, they're not as good. And they're also have a lower chance of winning. So we got to vote strategically.
Any other comments on treasurer? Gail?
Hi. The treasurer's job in California is managing an enormous amount of money. We're the 4th largest economy in the world. And the lady who's doing it now, Fiona Ma, has a incredible background in finance. She's a CPA. The only one of these candidates between Eleni and Anna is Eleni, and I can't pronounce her last name. Greek to me. But anyway, she has more experience in managing enormous sums because she's been lieutenant governor, and therefore she's been responsible for the budget of California. And I don't know if any of you guys have ever looked at the budget, but it's like enormous, ginormous. And one of the duties on managing the budget of California, if she's got any responsibility for it, is to figure out where the heck that money is going to be put that comes in and how to invest it to get interest so that when we have to pay stuff, you have some interest. So so for me, I met Eleni and Anna at the Democratic convention. Eleni impresses me far more than the other lady. And that's my point of view. You need someone that knows how to control and manage money in this job. It is not frivolous.
It sounds like these two are likely to get through the primary and meet again in November, right?
I'll make a comment as well. One of the things that makes me very nervous about Caballero is getting endorsed by Big Ag in Central Valley, which is promoting things like Roundup and other pesticides, herbicides, and things that we had said no to before. So I'm not sure any of those have moved forward at all. but there was a lot of discussion about that. And that's one of the reasons that I would step back from that. It's not environmental at all. And Big Ag is not noted for its conservancy of the natural environment in any way.
Others in the room?
Let's see, any other comments in the room or online? All right. In that case, let's move to Lieutenant Governor Ambrosia. Okay, and you'll need that microphone. All right, let's share again.
All right. I took a look at Lieutenant Governor and, that's the vice president, right? The backup to our governor's position. They do sit on some boards with,
There.
sorry, friends. So for Lieutenant Governor, like the vice president, right, our vice governor, our backup, there are, I was going to say that they sit on a few boards with related to higher education. And I distilled this down to the 3 Dems and the 1 Republican who seem to be the top contenders. And I'm not going to talk about the Republican because she's horrible. And I don't want to waste your time with that. But we could go to the next slide. So these are our 3 Democratic candidates. And I don't know, what did I put up there? It's considered largely symbolic position. Lieutenant Governor is next in line. Yeah, so Newsom did this from 2011 to 2019 and mentioned the higher education. The Lieutenant Governor can be the tiebreaker in the state Senate. These top 3 candidates, there's a gazillion, 16 candidates running, but we're going to talk about these 3 with an honorable mention to Janelle Kelman and Oliver Ma. So Josh Matthew Friday, he's a former Navy officer, and he's kind of, I guess, Newsom's pick, which for some that might be a winning an unofficial endorsement, and for some that might be a turnoff. He was the mayor of Novato up in Marin County and has worked as the COO of a climate advocacy group called Next Gen America. We'll go into him more in the next one. Fiona Ma is one of the higher profile names here in this field. She's served in several state official roles. Another one of those career politicians, which is good and maybe has its cons as well. She's been state treasurer since 2019, and before that was on the board of equalization. And she's served 4 terms in the state legislature. So she certainly knows what's going on in Sacramento. Michael Tubbs is the leader of a nonprofit devoted to combating poverty in California. He came in on the stage as the youngest and first Black mayor of Stockton at the age of 26 in 2016. And in 2021, he was on a special economic advisor to the governor and did this really amazing report on COVID and how it affected the African-American community. Next slide. So Josh Friday, this just goes into his endorsements and his contributors, kind of the vulnerabilities here. Again, with his Newsom anointed candidacy, good or bad. I'm not sure. He's definitely raising a lot of money, coming to the top. He's got a lot of really fantastic endorsements. I'm not going to get too into it. You guys can see it. We certainly will be sharing the slides. That vulnerability makes me a little nervous. Some people really like Newsom and some people are like, no, thank you. And I don't know, some think he's not as experienced, only having had his one term as mayor of Novato. So is he ready for the statewide? Maybe, maybe not. Next would be Fiona Ma. And she has, again, she's a career politician. She's got all the great endorsements. She's got all the money. She's got lots of experience in Sacramento. She's got some drama. I don't know, this drama that she was involved in was a sexual harassment lawsuit. I don't know what that means. Maybe, or how it affects her position or her character. I guess she has considered governor, but I don't know. I feel like this is the Democratic establishment. Like if you're like voting blue, this is who you would vote for. Next slide. And then Michael Tubbs, maybe a little bit of the underdog here. They call him the national media darling with a 2020 hometown loss that his opponents will not let the voters forget. He was very young when he was the mayor of Stockton, and a lot of, maybe made some mistakes, and people are not letting him forget those mistakes. He has a ton of endorsements. I thought it was notable that the Young Democrats clubs are all for him. Working families are all for him. So he intrigues me. I'd like to see more of what he can do. I don't know if this is where he shows what he can do at the state level, but maybe it is. Did I have one more slide? I don't know if I distilled it all. I think I was going to leave it as those are basically the top three candidates. I didn't include the other two, my two honorable mentions, because there's so many. But Oliver Ma is endorsed by the California Socialist Club, and that was a little bit intriguing to me. And Janelle, she seemed to be doing well, but these other three are just so clearly like these are the top three candidates. But I'll open it to comments if anyone has any.
Yeah, Michael Tubbs was kind of famously started a GBI or UBI, I forget, a basic income program in Stockton, giving people, I think $500 a month or something, and was well known for that. He's been endorsed by many local people, not just Sam Licardo and Rocana, but Cortese and many of the local individuals. On the other hand, the Mercury News gave a strong endorsement to Fiona Ma, pointing out that her extensive background, she is the has the most experience, the most qualified. I guess the only concern would be this sexual harassment lawsuit that was settled by the state. It's really hard to know what that means. I think we're all kind of gun shy after Swalwell, and Swalwell leaves, and
White car by the corner. Oh, no, that's okay.
Okay. There's a parking issue outside here. So of course, Swalwell drops out, and then a lot of people are saying, well, oh, we knew that. Everybody knew that. Well, we didn't know that. I didn't know that. When were they going to tell us? So, it's hard to say. Was this just a kind of a bogus lawsuit or a sign of something more serious? So, that's that's where we are on that race. So we'll see. And I've talked to people who've worked with Tubbs or talked to him, and were very impressed. So it's an interesting race. You have a comment?
Yeah, I do have lots of comments. She had the booth. She manned that booth the entire convention. And I really admire that she was there meeting everybody. She is a daughter of an immigrant. She was born in Scotland, and that's why her name is Fiona, which I think is really funny. She's San Francisco native. I lived in the Sunset District in San Francisco, and she would have been my supervisor. She is whip smart, totally smart. She's serving currently, I think she served in the assembly. Well, she's lived in the legislature for, I think, 8 years. She is really smart with money. She's currently the treasurer. And as you probably know, we invest a lot of money. She's incredibly organized, and she one of the things she wants to do is create a housing like advisory board as part of her office, which I think is great. And she was at Linda Sell's party earlier this year. So Linda might have a comment about Fiona, but the one thing because I went up to her at that event and said, you really need you need some representative from the mobile home community on that advisory board, because we're always forgotten and we're like the poorest people in the state. But anyway, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. There's guys calling us tow truck. If there's a Dodge minivan owner in here, or cute little red car, cute little red Toyota, or this nice Audi, not our cars.
I'll take the Audi. I want the Audi. I'll take the Audi. Anyway.
You're saying they're illegally parked?
Linda, do you have a comment on Fiona?
Oh.
I tend to go for the experienced candidate. So when I looked at Fiona Mall, her experience all over government, and, I think California is in a good financial situation. So I like that. So that's who I tend to go for, the most experienced candidate.
And, so I've been impressed with Fiona. I've also been impressed with Michael Tubbs. I've been dealing with him he's been leading mayors for GBI for several years, and, mayor of Stockton. And yes, he was a young mayor, and there were some issues, let's say, at his departure, but he's shown, he's very active. So both of those are great candidates, in my opinion.
Just a comment on Michael Tubbs. If you want to read about his stuff, it's how deep the roots, and talks about his ouster and the Republican against everything that he had achieved. So I think he's an interesting candidate. I also appreciate what Ma has brought to the table.
So my closing comment was that I think this is a race where it might be okay to be a little adventurous, and I think I'll probably do that and vote for Tubbs.
The Republican candidate, you guys, she is the worst. She is in the top 5, so she could make it to the primary. I don't know who wasn't a Republican and then becomes a Republican in these last few years, which is what she did. To really double down is amazing. Any other comments on Lieutenant Governor?
Well, for your information, for Lieutenant Governor, Fiona Ma got 49%, and Michael Tubbs got 24, and Josh Friday got 21. That's at the California Democratic Party. And what was the other one we just did? Was it treasurer? Oh yeah, treasurer. Elena, I thought it was 50%. You had to get 60% to get the endorsement. Elena got 52%. Anna Caballero got 35. Tony Vesca 7. So 52 for Elena, 35 for Anna Caballero. So. And this was also 2 months ago. Remember that.
All right. Any other comments?
Okay, can you hear me? Okay. My concern, I had not heard anything about this sexual harassment deal that you brought up with Elena Ma. Was she accused or she did the accusing? She was accused. Oh gosh. And the only reason I bring this up is because right now it's so prevalent in our society. I'm wanting to vote for her because I was impressed by her at the breakfast. But I'm also so concerned about if this becomes an issue, will that hurt her chances? I don't know. Can someone speak to that for me?
I'm not an expert, but the little bit that I read was that it was a miscommunication and she tried to share a bed in a hotel traveling, and the other person was very uncomfortable. I don't know if there was more to it. I don't know if she's done other things, but that I believe was the big thing.
Yeah, that was the accusation that she, put one of her subordinates in an uncomfortable position. All right. Anything else on Lieutenant Governor? All right. We'll move on here. So for governor, Doug?
Yeah, can you guys hear me? Can you hear me? Hello? Hello?
Yes, yes. Yeah. We can hear you very well.
You can hear me. Okay. You had me worried for a second.
I don't know if we can see you there.
You cannot see me. My camera's not on.
Oh, okay. All right. All right.
So
okay.
sorry everyone that I can't be joining you in person. I'm speaking to you from a minivan that is stuffed to the gills with what was until earlier today the contents of a college dorm room. So thank you for letting me join remotely. So if we can pull up the slides. So in the slide deck, you'll see, we have slides for every individual candidate with background information. But I'm actually not planning to speak really to any individual candidate. I just want to speak about, for the governor's race, the elephant in the room, literally, which is the way that we elect governor. It's for the general election, it's the two candidates who are the top vote getters at the primary, regardless of party. And so, given the number of Democratic candidates that are in the race, there's and only two Republican major candidates, there's a very real risk that if things go badly in the primary, that we could end up with two Republicans on the ballot for the general election. And so really for me in thinking about how to approach the governor's race, any percentage probability that is greater than zero of having only Republicans as our options is really unacceptable, given the importance of having our governor's office in Democratic hands, particularly given the situation with the federal administration right now. So, basically what I wanted to do, for the club, and I was thinking through this myself, was what's my personal perspective? How am I getting to, how do I as an individual voter, try to make sure that we have a Democrat on the ballot for the general election? So if we go past the slides for all the individual candidates, I've got a slide that sets that out based on what I was able to research. Yep, and this is all really about voting strategically. So, my theory of the case is that any of the major Democratic candidates would be leaps and bounds better than having one of the Republicans in office. And so it's really how do we make sure that we get a Democrat? And by the way, it's important not to kind of overstate things here. The odds are pretty good that we won't have this happen. But I've read anywhere from like 5 to 20% probability, which is still not too high for me. And so that's what's on my mind. Another thing that I'll flag is just that given the number of registered Republicans that are in the state, and if they were to split the vote, the Republican vote, right down the middle, they would each be in the high teens. And so, what really leapt out for me was, the concept that, if you have a Democrat who were able to get to 20%, that would be a good, safe number that would put them onto the ballot for the general election. And so really, the strategy here is all about, look for the major Democratic candidate who's most likely to exceed 20% of votes. And hopefully that's somebody who you have, who you like from a policy point of view. My general advice is I think of, voting as, not looking for somebody who you want to marry. It's more like picking a bus. You're looking for the bus that'll get you closer to where you're wanting to go. So practical, not glamorous. So with respect to that 20%, it's really a matter of, looking for signals, keeping an eye on polling, and also looking for, late breaking signals. If we start to have major endorsements like from Nancy Pelosi, Governor Newsom, that's also the kind of signal of, coordination and consolidation that tells you who's breaking out and who probably the best bet is. Another thing, just is thinking about the timing of when you vote. So I'll give you an example from back in 2020. Somebody who's very close to me really liked Pete Buttigieg and filled out their ballot for the presidential primary with Pete Buttigieg and dropped off the ballot. And a few hours later, he announced that he was dropping out of the race. And ouch. And we've also seen, dynamics like that here in the gubernatorial race, like with, the news about Eric Swalwell and him abruptly dropping out. So there's kind of a balance. You don't want to vote too late because, it takes a little while for California to count its ballots. And we don't want to create we want to have our election results soon, right? And you also don't want to set up a situation where you might, fail to get your ballot in at all. So I would not recommend holding off until election day. But that being said, if you're turning in your ballot a few days early, like in the neighborhood of May 28th to 30th, then you have the chance to see the polling numbers, hopefully have any last shocks that are going to happen in the race get out of the way, and still be ahead of the big massive ballots that are coming in on polling day. And so, that's a personal perspective. It's not a club position, but, it's in terms of thinking about, how to approach this race when we have, a potentially very bad outcome on the cards, how to approach it in a way that you're doing your best as an individual to make the right thing happen. Then if we can go to the next slide, Crystal, put something in just in terms of polling numbers and trends and when some prominent polls are dropping coming up. So these are some things to keep an eye on. Another thing that I'll just mention is, I don't like much that this person does, but they actually did us a favor, which is that Trump did endorse one of those two Republican candidates, and that actually makes it less likely that they will split the Republican vote down the middle. So, in terms of strategic voting, Trump actually made the odds of a Democratic lockout lower. So, thank goodness he was not being too smart about that. So that's what I got, and also interested in hearing other perspectives from the club.
Crystal, without, no, wait a minute, let's see. No, I was trying to, I see. How many are undecided here? No, I mean in the, well, that's a good question too. But in terms of on this, yeah, I mean, you just have to add it up and subtract it, which I could normally do in my head, but
Yeah, so is this on?
yeah.
It was still like 10 to 15% undecided in these polls, and this is an average of multiple polls. And it also doesn't show the 7 to 12 places of the governor. So there is quite a bit outstanding that's not shown here. And it does show it's updated as of yesterday.
Yeah, so by Doug's criteria, none of the Democrats meet this 20% is the right now. So yeah, let's hear some comments.
Yeah, I listened to a discussion on a radio station, KALW this week, which is pretty progressive. It's a PBS station. And the discussion, what I got out, one of the takeaways I heard that came through very strongly is Becerra tends to be almost purple. He's not very progressive. And there was a lot of negativity around how he worked in the Biden administration. Then they also said that Tom Steyer, of all the three top candidates, is the most progressive, despite the fact that he's a billionaire. And so I'm leaning now towards Steyer, but I'm afraid to actually sit there and send my ballot in because of the number problem. So, and I was going to hold off until the very, as long as I could, to make sure that he was one of the top contenders. But with Becerra starting to take the lead, it's very concerning to me. That's it.
Hi, it's Gail. Never have an opinion. Okay, so my favorite candidate is Katie Porter. And I don't know if you guys heard the story. When I was at the California convention, I was in an electric chair and we hit a bump and I was going to fall over. And Katie Porter ran over and saved my life. So, and she was with two, agent, I guess her staff anyway. So they didn't come over. She did. And she made it. They didn't fall. And I thought that was really cool that she's walking around talking to people and she spots that I'm in trouble. So she's got my vote, but I will not vote for her for governor because unfortunately, I think she's the best candidate. And the reason I think she's the best candidate is because she listens, and that's the key for me is she cares about people. But I don't think she can win in this election because for some reason, I don't think women come across as powerful when there's a lot of testosterone in the race. And I think she just gets crowded out and screamed out. But she, I think, is the best candidate. I agree with Doug. I think the best way to handle this is to see who's ahead. The key thing here is if you're going to mail late, don't mail it. The U.S. Post Office has made an announcement that they no longer stamp the mail the day it's received. So they could sit on this stuff and postmark it after the 3rd. And we don't want to do that. Larry can probably talk about where the drop-off boxes are, but there's lots of drop-off boxes in Santa Clara County. I think we're all in California. If you're not in California, I would suggest that you mail it quickly or, before the end of May. But if you're in California, if you're in Santa Clara County, find out where the dropout box is. If you're right around here, there's one at the grocery outlet over on Tasman and Fair Oaks. And I think there's one at the library. Anyway, I'll stop, but thank you very much.
I'm having a real problem with all these polls because this morning we went to a thing with Patrick Aarons and he asked, there are probably 70 or 80 people there. He asked, have any of you voted? 4 people raised their hands. Everybody is sitting on their hands. And so, I would look around. Have you guys voted? Have you made up your minds? No. So who's answering these polls? I just don't believe the polls. And I will say there was a very good op-ed in the Mercury a couple of days ago, and I finally came across it. And they had a very strong argument for Steyer. I've been hanging out I start with Betty Yee, then I start with Eric Swalwell, then switch to Betty Yee, then now I'm on Becerra, but I probably end up voting for Steyer, which is sort of not something we're going, yes, he's my man. It's not that. I think he'll do the best.
Yeah, I'll just add that I'm voting for Steyer too. He's progressive. He's very environmental minded and has good policies on housing, and he's not afraid to do it and do it right.
I'd like to say that I've been thoroughly confused with all the negativity that seems to be coming in the mail. It seems like more of a negative campaigning than what I'm really for. I have been impressed for a long time with Katie Porter. My concern is they're accusing her of treating her staff really poorly. She nicely put it into her campaign. She turned that around a little, but I don't know how many people will tune into that. But I think out of practicality, I want my vote to mean something. And even though I really care for her, I'm going to have to find someone else. And he's been very interesting, Tom, with his campaign, but there's a lot of stuff that's pressing him into kind of upkeeping Trump's casinos and other things that he invested. So how is that going to negatively affect his campaign? Anyone have an idea?
Yeah, I just want to say something looking at the chart up there. What that says is if that chart holds, 2 candidates, one Democratic and one Republican, will be running against each other. And the second Republican is so far down in the polls that I think it really doesn't matter if you're looking strictly at polling, whether you vote for Steyer or Becerra, because at least one of them will get in. So vote your conscience.
Yeah, I've been personally bouncing back and forth between Becerra and Steyer. Steyer has me for the environmental side. Becerra has me because let's see, he's balanced, but At this point, I want someone who's ruthless for us on our side, and Steyer is it. So I'm swaying strongly towards Steyer now.
Everybody, Guy Johnson, Southwest Airlines, IAM Union. I think we're in triage mode, and we've all changed our mind. I think what we have to decide at some point is who we're going to go over the finish line. I like how the gentleman presented this. Said it's like you're for the bus. You got to get on a bus to get there. We need a bus that's going to get us over the finish line. So, am I happy with what we're looking at? No, but I know we need a bus in our lane that's going to get us. We need to get in the state of California. And for me right now, that looks like Becerra, because if we throw our votes towards Steyer, he's so close to Bianco. We could lose one of those seats, I'm afraid. So let's just get somebody over the finish line, get on the bus, and we may not agree on the policy they're making, but at least we know we'll have somebody championing labor, championing our needs in the state of California in the governor's office.
Any other comments in the room? So I heard on NPR this morning an interview with Katie Porter, the clip from it where she was refusing to answer follow-up questions, and they said, "Well, everyone else has answered follow-up questions." I'm like, Katie Porter, I really like you. I like your markers and your chart paper, and I like how you like do math for real humans. I like all that stuff, and the accountability piece. But I'm really annoyed with them right now, and I am just enraged with Katie Porter and Matt Mann right now because I feel like they need to stop. They need to get out of it now. And I mean, it's like, I almost want to I think we should be phoning in to their campaigns and just say, what are you doing? You're going to blow this for all of us. I get it, Becerra, Steyer, and I don't want to vote for a millionaire, but I do want someone progressive and ruthless, but I want to vote for someone who's got a track record of taking it to the administration, which is Becerra, so I would be okay with either one, but these other two, I mean, they've got to be heard right now. They can be perfectly nice, charming people, and they can have great skills, but dude, you're just messing it up right now. So I don't know. They don't know me personally, but they'll probably be hearing from me. That's all.
And, I'll second what Bridget said, definitely looking at the top two Democrats, to me, it's one of those two. This is, it's critical from a party standpoint that we get at least one of those Democrats to the final primary in November. So, pluses and minuses with both of those. And as polling keeps changing, you see it toggling a little bit, but of course, I finally watched the debate late on Thursday night, and first time I had actually watched the debate as opposed to clips, and everyone, even the Democrats, were attacking Becerra because they see him as a front runner, good and bad for him. But to me, it's one of the top two Dems. And then as far as the question of in-person voting, so if you want to drop off your ballot as opposed to mailing it, there are already drop-off spots at the library, at the community center, at City Hall. But starting next weekend, from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., the community center ballroom at the Sunnyvale Community Center and Fair Oaks Park will be open every day until Election Day. And then the final weekend before Election Day, Brawley Park, Ponderosa Park, and Rainer Park will also have in-person voting. So you can easily drop off as opposed to mail. And, I'd always drop off those last few days just to say thanks to your election workers that are working those polls, and ultimately kind of meet them and thank them. But that's what I always do. I haven't mailed, and I don't think I've ever mailed. I think I've always dropped off.
Sunnyvale Presbyterian normally has a drop box too.
Any other comments in the room?
Any other comments in the room or online?
There is one comment that I would like to make. I've met Tom Steyer in person and was talking to him. It was a few years ago when I was working with the water district a lot. We were talking about water in California and all of the things that can go wrong, do go wrong, and get are not working right. So I was very impressed with his knowledge of it. And I'm very impressed with his support for all things democratic in the past. And also, I do not like Becerra. He's a placeholder as far as I'm concerned. I think we need somebody very progressive to meet the needs and the garbage that we're going to see coming from the feds. So I'm after Tom Steyer this time.
I have a question. Why is Tom Steyer's name not in the primary pamphlet?
I had, if there's no more comments, I had my own personal comments. I was going to just share that I've been enamored with Mayor Mamdani. And so following the Democratic Socialists to see, what they think about what's going on with California and who their endorsement is, and was really surprised to see that they have endorsed Steyer because he truly is the most progressive candidate. And so that got me thinking a little bit. Another strategy I use, especially in our blue state, all these blue candidates, how do we pick one? They're all saying versions of the right thing. But CBS out of LA did a special on trans athletes, high school trans athletes, and what the governor do to protect their rights. And that's where you really see the difference. And it's Tom Steyer.
Martin?
Yeah, just quickly. There was a comment about ballot statements. My understanding is that there's certain campaign finance restrictions if you submit a candidate statement, and I don't recall who has and hasn't submitted candidate statements for the governor's race, because there are a lot of really, really awful candidate statements from no hope candidates, one of which actually had to get a disclaimer from the Secretary of State because the guy is basically a Nazi. But like there's a special disclaimer on that one. But I don't recall which serious candidates there or not. But given that Tom Steyer has more money than God, but less money than Elon Musk, I don't recall the exact restrictions. If it's just about campaign spending, I can't imagine he'd be following that, given that if you're watching any television, if you've been watching like the NHL playoffs or the MLB playoffs, you've been trying to watch the Giants and being frustrated at their lack of offense. There have been a lot of ads, and I'd say the majority of them have been Steyer. Probably an actual majority of them have been Steyer ads. There's been a handful of ads for lieutenant governor and a handful of ads for Becerra and Porter that I've seen. But I was going to say, although I don't think I saw a Becerra campaign statement either, but again, I could be. I think Katie Porter was the only kind of top 3 candidate I saw a statement for, but I could be completely wrong about that. I looked at this like 3 weeks ago. So.
Okay, well, I think we need to move to the final item here, our elections. I'll just comment. I'm also prefer Steyer to Becerra because Becerra is kind of very much status quo, and Steyer is a disruptor. And I recommend, in spite of the various debates, the best discussion you will hear is the housing forum at the Turner Center that was hosted by Ezra Klein. It was just the Democrats, and they went into, to a lot of length on housing, homelessness, and it wasn't the okay, you've got 30 seconds and now you got 15 seconds to reply, and they went into some depth of the it resembled more Ezra Klein's podcast than these debates. So you really get to see where the candidates are, how they think, and the range as they do trade-offs or whatever. It's a much better format, and you can really learn from that. I also like Katie Porter, but I agree that Katie Porter and Mahan need to get out of there. They're going to be, it was a Ralph Nader who, gave us George Bush. So, yeah, if they think they're going to run again, and if they stay into the end and think they're going to run again, I think they may need to think that again. So thank you, everyone. A great discussion. Now we can all fill out our ballots and we'll be done. So let's move to the election and bring up Peggy Brewster from the doing this.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Peggy Shen Brewster. I was very honored to serve as the chair for the Nominating Committee again this year. And I thank Sandi, Spires, and Salop for being a thought partner. We have a relatively stable board in terms of changes from this year to next year. Just a couple of changes. So we, first of all, want to thank Charlene for serving this year, and she will be stepping off. Thank you so much. We have Mike Storani as president and Hopkins as vice president. And we are proposing a flip there. I would like to move to president, and I will continue to support. And as vice president, we are stable with Gail continuing on as secretary, David Wieswanger as treasurer, political director Martin Pine, communications director Mr. Wickham, membership. Oh, I'm sorry. Emergence Dudley, membership director Mr. Wickham, director at large Tara Martin Lillis, and we have a new director at large on the site, and that's Guy Johnson. So I would like at this time to invite anybody on the slate, if you would like to say a few words, maybe up to a minute or two. And I see Gary, so he's raising his hand. So
while we're doing that, as guys coming up here, do we need to do anything about the PIN numbers or any logistics we need to do in the background while we're ready to vote? Everybody have a PIN?
If you don't know your PIN, you can ask me.
I like to stand. Hi, my name is Guy Johnson. I grew up in Sunnyvale. Got my education in Santa Clara Unified School District. I'm an alumni of the Santa Clara Vanguard Government Dual Corps. I'm proud to say I brought a national championship back to the city of Santa Clara when I was 15 years old. Graduated from San Jose State University. And those of you who remember the old downtown Sunnyvale before the Sunnyvale Town Center was built, I can say that was in grade school. I won first place for window painting contest before they tore down downtown Sunnyvale. So my roots are in Sunnyvale. I did leave for several years and lived in Alaska and Texas and Vancouver, British Columbia. I got a lot of experience with different communities. I've been at Southwest Airlines for 9 years as a customer service agent. I've been a trustee for 2 terms with my union. I'm a delegate for the South Bay Labor Council. Just applied for the Human Rights Commission for Santa Clara Board of Supervisors, so I'm waiting to see what's happening with that. It would be an honor and privilege to serve on the executive board for one of, I believe, the best Democratic clubs in the state of California. And I want to acknowledge the current board for the work you've done and continue to do, and as well as for Peggy for spending some time in her very busy schedule to meet with me, and for Gail for chat, to show us that, hey, would you step up to serve? So I would be privileged and honored to serve with this amazing group. Thank you.
Online. I'm seeing a message online that mine is not working. Did you all hear that online? I got a message that we couldn't hear and we have to use the other mic. It might be that one that we need to hear. No, it is the people online that were texting. So
No, we didn't hear much online. But we got the general tenor.
Right in the room.
Okay.
Maybe, can you hear any of these microphones?
No, wait, like online, can you give a thumbs up or something?
We got it much better.
Okay. Okay. All right. Is anybody else in the room that is on this list?
We can't hear the one that you're using, the mic you're using now. It keeps going in and out.
So that was everything. They couldn't hear you. Am I? But you can make it concise or whatever. Sit here. I'm also sit here so they can see your face. Yeah. They can't see you whether I see. Sorry.
Johnson, the Southwest Airlines, shop steward for my local, I've been trustee for 2 terms. Grew up here in the city of Sunnyvale, got all my education in the Santa Clara School District. I mentioned that I'm an alumni of the Santa Clara Vanguard Dual Corps. Brought back a national championship here to the city of Santa Clara, Santa Clara County when I was 15. Graduated from San Jose State University and just really honored to have the opportunity to serve on the executive board.